So yeah, welcome back. Hope you had a good time. Talk about this unit. This unit spans chapter 8, chapter 9 and chapter 11. So we'll start with chapter 11, of course, and then we're going to go back and do 8 and 9. And you may find as well there's some extra work from different parts, from different resources to supplement what we need to cover. So this is statistics and probability. We've got the checklist on page 24 here. That's what we're going to be working through. And today we're doing 11A, 11B, 11C and 11D. And that might sound like a lot, but you can see I've only selected a few questions from each. And I promise you the maths is pretty easy. It's stuff like calculating the mean, median and mode. Okay, so it's basic statistics. Let's start with 11A, and we're going to look at the summary table there. There's a few things I want to point out to you. Firstly, data. Okay, so data is information about a particular group. We have categorical data and numerical data. So categorical data might be something like we could survey this class and say, what's your favourite colour? And the categories are colours, right? Or we could perform numerical data and we could measure everyone's height or head circumference or how big their ears are. And those are things that we measure. That's numerical data. We could say, how many TVs do you have at home? And that would be something we count rather than measure, but it's still numerical data. Now, a couple of words that are going to be important for us then is population and sample. Okay. So you guys are year 11 students, there's a couple of year 10s thrown in here, and you guys, if we were to measure the height of all of you, you would be a sample of the population, being all students at Tennyson Woods College or all year 11 students at Tennyson Woods College, right? So there's the population, which is the whole group, and then there's a sample, which is a small group, and what we're doing in statistics is we're taking a sample and we're measuring properties of the sample to make inferences about the population. So rather than measuring everyone's height, which would take ages because there's like 130 of you, we can measure 20 people's height and suppose that the average of 20 people's is indicative of the average of the population. So that's what those kinds of words are there. We've got distribution, outliers and so forth. Now, within numerical data, we have two types of data. We have continuous and discrete. Discrete and continuous. And the difference between these is discrete is things you count. Things you count. Continuous is things you measure. Okay? Now things you count take whole integer values, alright? How many goals did you score during a match? How many chairs are there in the classroom? All right, these are things that you would count. You go 1, 2, 3, there's 5 of them. Continuous data is things you measure, and it's called continuous because it occurs on an interval. The interval is continuous. You measure how tall someone is, you measure their head circumference. All right, things that you measure, the distance from here to home, etc. So within numerical, be aware, two types of data, discrete and continuous. All right, let's move on to 11B then. So in 11A, I'm just providing a bit of a summary of some words around statistics. 11B, we've got the mean, median, and mode. Okay, so the mean is the average. All right, so you add all of the results up and divide them how many there are. The median is the middle piece of data when they're arranged in ascending order, and the mode is the most frequently occurring. We should all have heard of these words before, hopefully. Okay, let's turn the page. I won't talk too much about distributions at the moment. I'll just point out we have what we call a symmetrical distribution. All right, we have a positively skewed distribution and we have a negatively skewed distribution. So the difference being here, you have most of the data occurring to the left. Here, most of the data occurs in the middle, and here, most of the data occurs on the right. Those will pop up. Spread of data, we have range, interquartile range, and a box plot. So, box plots aren't necessarily part of the methods course, but they're a good way to understand the 5-number summary. That'll pop up in our example. And then on to 11D. The only thing to say about that is we'll apply that formula in a moment. Okay, so let's get straight into the questions then. So we've got examples. Consider the data set, and the data set we have is 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, 6, 7. And this data set could represent anything, okay? It could be how many times you checked your phone per day, it could be how many times you had a snack per day. This is the data set. Part A says find the mean, median, mode, range, and IQR interquartile range. Find the 5-number summary. And then we're going to show how we can do all of that using technology as well, using our calculator. So for the mean, all right, the mean is the average. This is the symbol we use for the mean, right? And that means we add them all up and divide it by how many there are. So we're going to have 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 5. 6 plus 6 plus 7 divided by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 results. So what have we got? 2, 4, 7, 11, 16, 21, 27, 33, 40 divided by 10, 4. Okay? So the average result here, the mean, is 4. Okay, next we have the median, all right? And so the median is the data piece that lies in the middle when they're written in ascending order. And we can see that they're written in ascending order because 1's the lowest and 7 is the highest. So we have 10 data values, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the middle is here. This is the middle, right? Because we've got 5 data pieces there and 5 data pieces there. So if we have an odd amount of data pieces, all right, if I were to tack another number on here, then this would be the middle data piece because we have 5 there and 5 there. We don't have an odd number, we've only got an even number, which means the median has to be halfway between 4 and 5. Halfway between 4 and 5 is 4.5. Okay, for the mode is the data piece that occurs the most. All right, and what we can see is we've got 1, that occurs twice. We've got 5, that occurs twice. And we've got 6, that occurs twice. So we don't have one mode, all right? Here we have 3 modes, and we're going to call that trimodal. Okay, the data set is trimodal, it has 3 modes, and they are 1, 5, and 6. Each of those data pieces occurs twice. If we had a data piece that occurs 3 times, then that would be the mode, right? That would occur the most. So mean, median, mode, done. Okay, let's do the range. Now the range is just the highest value, take the lowest value. The maximum, take the minimum. So we have 7, take 1, and that's going to be 6. All right, our range is 6. The interquartile range is a bit trickier. The interquartile range is Q3 take away Q1. Now, Q3 is the median of the top half of data, and Q1 is the median of the lower half of data. So you can see here we've got 2 halves of data, right? This is the lower half, this is the upper half. We have our minimum, this is our median, this is our maximum. And so Q1 and Q3, they correspond with the first quartile and the third quartile. The first quartile goes, what's the middle data piece of the lower half? Well, it's going to be 2. That's our Q1. It's our 25th percentile. That you can see, that's the median of the lower half of the data, Q1. Q3 is the median of the upper half of the data. Okay, Q3 take Q1, and so we're going to have 6 take away 2, and our interquartile range is 4. All right. Now what this means, maybe I will link that to if we were to draw a box and whisker plot. So we've got a scale that goes from 1 to 7, right? And this text, let's replace it. Much better by the look of it. Let's go blue. Okay, we've got a scale that goes from 1 to 7. All right, so we've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we've got our minimum and our maximum, okay? So we'll draw lines there. We've got a mean of 4, and we saw our Q1 is 2, and Q3 is 6. And if we draw a box and whisker plot, this is what it's going to look like. And this just breaks the data up into quarters. We have 25% of the data occurs between 1 and 2, 25% of the data occurs between 2 and 4, 25% between 4 and 6, and 25% between 6 and 7. So that's what the box and whisker plot illustrates to us. And it can demonstrate if data is skewed, right? So if we had a box and whisker plot that looked like this, all right, what that would show you is 75% of the data is occurring here, and 25% here. It can show you a positive skew. It's pushed to one side. This is quite a symmetric distribution because it's evenly spread out, right? Most of the data is spread out over the number line. Okay, let's move on to the second example. Everyone pretty okay with that skill? Any questions? Hopefully it's sort of mind-numbingly easy. If that's the case, that's good. It means you sort of got it down packed. All right, on to the next example. And here we have the number of goals scored by a footballer over the season, an unnamed footballer. So they've got 0 goals 5 times. So we can go how many goals and the frequency with which that occurred. 0 goals 5 times. They've got 1 goal 6 times. They've got 2 goals 4 times, 3 goals 3 times, and 4 goals they kicked on 1 occasion. That was the highest. Okay. Determine the skew of the data. So, if we're looking at this, all right, do most of the results occur down the bottom end, at the top end, or in the middle? And we can see, like you've got 5 and 6, there's 11 pieces of data here, 11 pieces of data here, compared to 8 pieces of data over those there. So it's very top heavy. Most of the data is occurring in this lower end, isn't it? And so if we were to graph it, like you think of the distribution, it's going to, or a histogram or something like that, it's going to look like this. It's going to look something like that. And so that's what we call a positive skew, because most of the data is to the left. Okay, so where it says determine the skew of the data, it's positively skewed. Okay, and that's contrasted with a symmetrical distribution and a negative skew, both illustrated on the previous page. Okay, part B, find the mean, median, mode, range, and interquartile range of the data set. So I'm not going to go into this in complete detail. All I want to show you is probably the simplest way to interpret this data set is that we have 0 and we had 0 goals 5 times. So if we're going to interpret the data set completely, we're going to have 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. All right, we had 0 goals 5 times. And then we had 1 goal 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we had 2 goals 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we had 3 goals 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And we had 4 goals once. So there you can see we've written the whole data set out in ascending order. And so now you can go through and find the mean, median, and mode, and so forth. All right. So the median, you can isolate the middle. The mean, you can add them all up, divided by how many there are. And the mode, you can see from here, 6 is the most frequently occurring. Range and interquartile range can all be abstracted now that we've written them out in ascending order. Okay. All right. And then the last one, let's do question 3, which wants us to calculate the standard deviation and variance manually. So before I move on, are there any questions about how you would do 2? All right, so I'll leave that to you to have a go at. That's how you write out the distribution. But for the sake of not being repetitive, let's move on then. So we've got question 3. Consider the data set 1, 1, 2, 3. All right, so we've only got 4 pieces of data, and we're going to calculate the standard deviation, and we're going to use this formula. Look at this complex looking formula. cool little symbols there. So this is what we call the standard deviation, and all this is a measure of spread. That's all you need to know. It's a measure of how spread out the data is. The smaller the standard deviation, the closer the data together. The larger it is, the more spread out it is. Now, you'll notice for us to calculate this, we need to know the mean. That is, we need to know the average. So I'm going to calculate the average first. The average of this data set is 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3 divided by 4. Alright, so we're going to have 2 plus 2 is 6. 2 plus 2 is 4 plus 3 is 7. And 7 divided by 4 is 1.75. Okay, so we've got a mean of 1.75. We're ready to put it into the formula. So, let's have standard deviation equals the square root of. Now where we have, what this symbol means, this symbol here, it's Greek epsilon, it means sum of. The sum of means when you add them all together. And what we're doing is the sum of each value, so from the first data piece to the nth data piece, so from the first data piece to the fourth data piece, because we've got 4 data pieces here, of each value, take the mean squared, divided by how many there are. Okay? So each value, take the mean squared. So our first value, 1, take the mean squared. Okay? The first value, take the mean squared. Plus, the second value is also 1. Squared. Okay? Plus the third value, take the mean squared. And then plus the fourth value, take the mean squared. Okay, so all I've done there is this top part. The sum of each value, take the mean squared. I've written it out. We're going to add all that together and divide by how many there are? 4. Alright, take a long time to type out. I might do it the quick way. 1, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and we've got 0.8291. 0.829. So that's the standard deviation. The variance is the standard deviation squared, which is another measure of standard deviation. So we've covered a lot of stuff there. This would be new, okay, calculating it manually. And really all I'm doing here is saying all you need to know, standard deviation is a measure of spread. Here's the formula, here's what that formula means. Okay, so that's the new stuff. Hopefully the rest of the stuff was a bit of recollection. Before we finish though, let's look at how we can use our calculator with these data sets. And really, you do need to know both. You need to know how to use your calculator and how to do it manually. So let's take just this data set that I've got up here. So let me give you some calculator instructions. Open up your calculator, go to menu and statistics. All right, statistics is the second option. Now, you'll notice you've got list 1, list 2, list 3, list 4. We're just going to put this data set in list 1. So going down the page, we're going to have the number 1, the number 1, the number 2, and the number 3. Straight down the first column, straight down list 1. Okay, then what we do is we press calc, which corresponds with F2, calc. And before we calculate, and then what you would press is first variable, but let's just check our settings. Okay, let's just check our settings, which is F6, check your settings. And this is what your settings should say. 1 var x list, list 1. 1 var frequency, 1. That's the setting you should have when you have one set of data. All right. If that's the case, press exit and press calculate the first variable, and it's going to bring up for you all of that information. You can scroll down. You've got the mean. You've got the sum of all data sets. You've got the sum of all data sets squared. You've got the standard deviation. You've got minimum, Q1, median, Q3, max, the mode. Okay, all of that is listed here. It produces the 5-number summary for you. So it is a tool that you can utilize, that you will have access to in your next test as well. Okay, any questions? So what we're working on today then is 11A, 11B, 11C and 11D, selected questions from your checklist. So you refer to the checklist, 11A, question 1, 2 and 5, etc. All right, let's get into it. Let's go.